The signal no one expected the night was quiet at the Earth Space Observatory. Screens glowed in the control room, showing endless waves of static from deep space. Most scientists were tired, sipping coffee and waiting for the night shift to end. Nothing unusual ever came through the antennas, just the steady background noise of the galaxy. But then, one screen flickered. Dr. Elena Ward, a communications expert, frowned as a faint pulse appeared in the corner of the monitor. At first, it looked random, just another piece of broken static, but something about the rhythm caught her attention. It repeated, again and again, the same pattern. She leaned closer. "This isn't noise," she whispered. "It's a code." The other scientists gathered, curiosity replacing their fatigue. The signal was weak, broken by distance, but inside the static was structure like a voice, struggling to speak through water. Hours passed as they cleaned the noise, layering filters and amplifiers. Slowly, the message took shape. What they uncovered chilled them to the bone. It was not just numbers or sounds. It was words. Please, cries for help, and it was not in any human language. The team gasped as alien symbols filled the screen. Some were easy to guess: danger, hunger, war. Others were strange, full of meaning that no human could fully understand. But one part was unmistakable. The voice inside the signal was desperate. Whoever sent this was begging for rescue. Dr. Ward felt her stomach twist. "This wasn't meant for us," she said softly. "This message was never meant to be heard by humans." The scientists worked through the night, hearts pounding. The more they decoded, the clearer the story became. A world far away had been destroyed. Its people had been hunted and broken. In their last hope, they had sent a hidden signal to their allies, but those allies never came. Instead, by chance, the signal had fallen into human hands. News of the discovery spread quickly through Earth's networks. At United Earth Council headquarters, leaders and military officers gathered around a glowing holodisplay of the alien message. The room was silent as the message replayed, voices filled with fear, images of ruined cities, coordinates pointing to a dying star system. "They weren't calling us," said Admiral Reeves, his voice heavy. "We were never supposed to hear this." "But we did," replied Dr. Ward, who had been asked to testify. Her hands trembled, but her voice was firm. "And if we understand it, we can't pretend we don't." Arguments broke out. Some council members warned of traps. What if this is a trick? A way to draw us into a war not our own? Others said humanity was still young compared to the great powers of the galaxy. We can't afford to get involved. Not yet. But then one voice rose above the rest. Commander James Hall, captain of the starship Artemis. His eyes burned with quiet fire as he looked around the chamber. "We always feared the day we'd meet the unknown," he said. "Well, the day is that day. Someone out there is crying for help." No one else answered. No one else even cared. If humanity turns away now, then what kind of species are we? The council fell silent. His words struck deep. For a long moment, all anyone could hear was the faint echo of the alien message still playing in the chamber. The vote was called. It was close, too close, but the result was clear. Humanity would act. The Artemis stood ready at Earth's orbital docks, her silver hull gleaming under the light of the rising sun. Crews rushed through final checks, loading supplies, weapons, and medical kits. This mission was unlike any before. It was not war, not exploration, not diplomacy. It was a leap into the unknown, guided only by a desperate voice that was never meant for human ears. On the bridge, Commander Hawley looked at his crew. Some were nervous, some excited, but all were ready. "We don't know what waits for us out there," he said, "but we know one thing: they need us, and if we don't go, no one will. Remember this. Tonight, we are not just flying for Earth. We are flying for a world that still believes rescue can come. The engines roared. The Artemis lifted slowly from its dock, then shot forward into the dark sea of stars. The coordinates from the alien message glowed on the navigation screen, a beacon calling them across the void. And as Earth watched their departure, one truth settled into every heart. Humanity had heard what no one else dared to listen to. And now they were answering. The choice to intervene. The stars stretched endless and cold as the Artemis cut through the void. Its engines glowed faint blue, carrying the crew away from Earth and into the unknown. But inside the ship, silence filled the corridors. Every crew member felt the same weight. They were chasing a signal that was never meant for them. On their bridge, Commander James Halley studied the glowing coordinates again. The alien message repeated in the background, broken but haunting voices trembling with fear, images of burning skies, and the sound of silence after destruction. Lieutenant Arya Chun broke the quiet. "Sir, what if it really is a trap?" Her voice was careful, almost hesitant. What if someone sent it on purpose, knowing humans would come? Halley didn't look away from the stars. "Then we find out," he answered. "But I'd rather walk into a trap trying to save someone than stay safe while they die alone." No one argued. His words carried the weight of humanity's choice. Back on Earth, the United Earth Council still fought over that choice. In a grand chamber lit by tall windows, leaders from every nation debated as the signal echoed again on the holo display. "We can't risk our people," shouted Counselor Merrick, his fist slamming the table. "We are not the galaxy's guardians. Let someone else answer this call." Someone else? Admiral Reeves leaned forward, his voice like steel. No one else even heard it. Or if they did, they ignored it. Another counselor, older and weary, rubbed his temples. And what if they were right to ignore it? What if this cry for help belongs to a species doomed for a reason? If we involve ourselves, we may inherit their enemies. The chamber filled, with murmurs, fear clashing with duty. But then Dr. Elena Ward, the scientist who had first uncovered the signal, stood. Her face was pale from long nights without rest, but her eyes held fire. "You keep asking what will happen if we go," she said firmly. "But I ask, what will happen if we don't? That voice out there will fade. Those lives will end. And humanity will be remembered, not as saviors, not even as fighters, but as bystanders." The silence after her words was sharp, like a blade. Even those who doubted shifted uneasily in their seats. The vote had already been cast days ago. The Artemis was already on its way. But in that chamber, hearts still struggled with the weight of the choice. Humanity had stepped into the unknown, and there was no turning back. Aboard the Artemis, the crew trained in endless cycles. Engineers checked every system twice. Soldiers cleaned their weapons again and again, as if the shine could ease their nerves. Medics prepared for wounds they had never treated before. Alien wounds, alien biology, things no textbook could explain. In the mess hall, voices whispered late into the night. Some asked if they would ever return. Others wondered what kind of people they were going to meet. "Do you think they'll even trust us?" One pilot asked quietly. "We weren't the ones they called. To them, we're just strangers." Another crew member replied, "Maybe, but strangers who came are better than allies who abandoned them." Commander Hall moved among them, listening. More than speaking, he knew their fears. He felt them too. But he also knew that fear alone could not guide them. Humanity had chosen, and now they had to see it through. Days passed. The stars shifted as the Artemis neared the edge of known space. The closer they came to the coordinates, the stronger the signal grew. It no longer sounded like static. It sounded like voices just outside the airlock weak, breaking, but a live dot Then the ship's sensors caught something else. "Sir," Arya-chan reported, her voice tight. "I'm picking up debris fields, large ones. On the main screen, broken. Shapes floated in the darkness-twisted metal, shattered hulls, fragments of starships drifting like bones in a black sea." The crew went silent. Some of the wrecks were massive, their design unfamiliar but terrifying. Whoever these people were, they had not been weak. They had fought, and still they had lost. Survivors? Hale asked. "Maybe," Chan answered. "But sir, if there are survivors, then the ones who destroyed these ships could still be out there." The words fell heavy. Suspense wrapped around every heart. Hale studied the wreckage for a long moment. Then his voice cut through the tension. "Prepare landing. Parties, we came here to answer a call for help, and we won't turn away now." The Artemis adjusted course, sliding past the broken remains of the battlefield. The alien message pulsed louder, guiding them toward a scarred world below. Through the viewscreen, the planet appeared, dark clouds whirling over its surface, cities glowing faintly beneath layers of ash and ruin. Lieutenant Chun whispered, almost to herself, "This world looks dead." But then the signal spiked. "No, not dead. Not yet. There were survivors. And humanity was about to meet them." A world in shadows, the Artemis descended through the thick, gray clouds. Lightning flashed across the sky, lighting the surface below for only seconds at a time. What the crew saw chilled them. Cities burned black, towers broken like snapped bones. Rivers turned to ash. No one spoke on the bridge. The planet was not just wounded, it was dying. "Radiation levels high," Lieutenant Arya-chan reported quietly. "But survivable in some areas." Commander Hall nodded. "Find a landing site? Somewhere with cover." The ship's sensors pinged again. Weak energy signatures pulsed from below the surface, like tiny heartbeats buried under rubble. Survivors. The alien signal had been true. The crew held their breath as the Artemis lowered into the shadow of a ruined mountain range. The landing gear touched cracked earth with a groan, and silence pressed in around them. Hale stood from his chair. His voice carried steady confidence. "We came here for them. Suit up. We move in 5 minutes." The landing party stepped out into the broken world. Their boots sank into dust that had once been soil. The air was heavy, metallic, carrying the smell of fire long past. The sky above was red, not with sunset, but with scars left from war. Lieutenant Chun scanned the area with her visor. No movement, but the ground, it's hollow. There are structures below us. Dr. Elena Ward, holding a translation device, crouched near a shattered road. Her fingers touched faint carvings in the stone, symbols the same kind from the signal. "This was once a great city," she whispered. "Now it's just—" She didn't finish. None of them needed the word. Suddenly, a sound cracked the silence. A faint metallic echo, like a door scraping against stone. The humans raised their weapons, scanning the ruins. From the shadow of a collapsed building, a figure emerged. It was thin, frail, wrapped in rags of what might once have been a uniform. Its skin glowed faintly in patches, as if cracked glass hid light beneath. Its eyes were too large, glowing softly, filled with fear. The alien froze when it saw the humans. Its hands trembled. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Dr. Ward stepped forward slowly, lowering her device. She spoke softly, letting the translator catch her words. "We heard your message. We came to help." The device echoed her words in broken tones of the alien language. The figure's eyes widened. Tears filled them. It stumbled forward, collapsing to its knees. Behind it, more shapes appeared. Dozens, then hundreds. Survivors emerging from underground tunnels, their bodies weak, their faces hollow from hunger and despair. The landing party stood stunned, They had expected a few survivors, maybe none. But here, an entire people had clung to life in the shadows. Now, they stared at the humans with a mix of hope and disbelief. One of the aliens, older and stronger than the rest, stepped forward. His voice cracked as he spoke, but the translator caught enough. "You are not the ones we called. You are not our allies." "No," Commander Hallel said firmly. "We're not. But we heard your cry for help, and we answered. The aliens." Large eyes blinked, shining in the dying light. His voice trembled. "Our allies abandoned us. We fought alone. We lost everything. Why would strangers risk themselves for us?" Halley looked around at the faces of people who had nearly given up. He felt the weight of his answer. "Because no one deserves to be forgotten," he said. "Not while humanity is still alive to fight." The survivors led the humans into the tunnels. The air was damp and cold. Stone walls shook with every distant thunderclap. But inside, faint lights glowed small fires, cracked power cells, desperate attempts to survive. Children with hollow cheeks clung to their mothers. Old warriors coughed in the shadows. Their weapons rusted beside them. The humans carried crates of medical supplies and food. At once, the survivors surged forward, not in fear, but in desperation. Dr. Ward moved quickly, showing them how to use the supplies. The medics worked tirelessly, tending to wounds and sickness. Soldiers handed out rations, watching with tight jaws as starving hands reached for bread. Lieutenant Chun whispered to Halley, "They've suffered for years, maybe decades." Halley nodded. "And if we're not careful, they won't survive much longer." In the deepest chamber, the leader of the survivors revealed their truth. Holo images flickered, showing fleets burning in space, cities falling under fire, allies vanishing without explanation. They promised protection, the alien leader said bitterly. But when the enemy came, they turned away. "We fought alone, and we lost." Dr. Ward studied the images, her face pale. "Who did this to you?" The leader's eyes glowed with fear. "They will return. They always return. And if you stay here, you will die with us." The chamber fell silent. The humans looked at each other. They had come expecting to rescue the weak, but instead they had stepped into the middle of an unfinished war. Commander Hale's jaw tightened. He looked back at the flickering hollow of destruction, then at the starving survivors around him. "If your enemy returns," he said slowly, "then they'll have to face us too." The survivors stared at him as if he had spoken madness. No one had ever said those words before. No one had ever dared. And in that silence, something changed. For the first time in years, hope sparked in the shadows. The survivors' truth. The tunnels shook with a deep rumble. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and some of the children screamed. Commander Halley and his soldiers raised their weapons, scanning the shadows. But it wasn't an attack, just thunder from the poisoned sky above. Still, the fear in the survivors' eyes told the humans everything. They were always waiting, always hiding, always afraid of the moment the enemy would return. The leader of the survivors, the one with glowing eyes and scars across his face, motioned for Halley and Dr. Elena Ward to follow. He led them deeper, past broken doors and collapsed chambers, until they reached a hidden room. Inside, faint light flickered from an ancient projector. The walls lit up with ghostly images scenes of a world that had once been alive. Towering cities of crystal and steel, skies filled with elegant ships, a people proud, strong, and unbroken. The survivors watched silently, their faces hollow. With grief and the images shifted. Fire, invasion, great ships tearing through the skies, unleashing weapons that shattered cities in seconds. Screams filled the air as the projector replayed their history. Dr. Ward's throat tightened. "My God!" She whispered. The alien leader's voice was low, full of bitterness. We were not weak. We had fleets, we had armies. But they came, in numbers too great. Our allies promised to fight beside us. Instead, they watched. They let us burn. Commander Hale's fists clenched. Why? The alien turned to him, eyes burning faintly. Because the enemy paid them. Because survival in this galaxy is bought with betrayal. We were a price too high, and so we were left to die. The humans exchanged grim looks. Now they understood why the message had been hidden, encrypted. The survivors had sent it in desperation not to humanity, but to allies who had already abandoned them. And yet it was humanity who came. Dr. Ward asked quietly, "Who is the enemy? Who are we facing?" The alien's expression hardened. They are called the Keth, raiders of worlds, breakers of civilizations. They do not conquer to rule. They conquer to erase. They leave behind nothing but silence. The word Keth sent a chill through the chamber. The humans had never heard it before, but the weight of it was enough. They will come again, the alien continued. They always return to finish what they started. And if you stay here, they will destroy you too. The room fell silent. Hale looked at the survivors, children too weak to stand, elders clinging to broken weapons, mothers holding empty eyes. They had lived too long in fear, waiting for death. We didn't come here to run, Hala said firmly. We came because no one else would. If the Keth return, then they'll find they're not fighting a broken people anymore. They'll be fighting us. Gasps rippled through the survivors. They looked at him as though he had spoken madness. No one fights the Keth, the leader said sharply, not without being destroyed. Hale's voice did not waver. Then let them try. Later, in the tunnels, the crew of the Artemis worked side by side with the survivors. Soldiers handed out rations. Medics treated wounds. Engineers repaired failing generators. The aliens watched them closely, still struggling to believe. Lieutenant Arya Chun leaned close to Hale as they supervised. Sir, if the Keth are as powerful as they say, we don't stand a chance. Hale's jaw tightened. Maybe. But humanity has faced impossible odds before. And we survived because we don't fight fair. Chun allowed herself a small smile. That sounds like us. That night, the humans gathered in a circle with the survivors. For the first time in years, firelight flickered in the tunnels, warm instead of cold. One of the alien children stepped forward timidly, holding out a broken piece of metal shaped like a toy, a starship, small and cracked. He placed it in Hale's hands. His eyes glowed faintly as he whispered something. The translator spoke. Make them afraid. Hale looked at the child, then at the toy. Slowly, he closed his hand around it. We will, he promised. But even as hope began to stir, danger grew closer. The Artemis's orbiting sensors flashed warnings to the crew above. At the edge of the system, shadows were moving. Dozens of massive shapes, their engines cold and dark, drifting silently closer. The Keth were returning, and this time, humanity would be waiting. Humanity's gamble. The warning from the Artemis's orbiting sensors spread through the tunnels like fire. The Keth were coming back. Survivors froze in terror. Children cried. Old warriors clutched their broken weapons, knowing they could not face the monsters who had destroyed their world before. But the humans did not freeze. They moved. Commander Hall stood in the middle of the survivors' gathering chamber, his voice calm but sharp. The Keth will arrive soon. If we wait down here, they'll bury this planet and everyone in it. But if we prepare, if we use what's left of this world, we can make them bleed before they ever reach you. The alien leader shook his head. You cannot fight them. We tried. We had fleets, armies, shields. Nothing was enough. Hale's eyes narrowed. That's because you fought them their way. Humanity doesn't fight fair. The tunnels came alive with new purpose. Soldiers from the Artemis worked side by side with survivors. Engineers built traps from ruins, wiring old power cells into explosives, turning collapsed buildings into ambush points, digging pits to swallow enemy walkers. Lieutenant Arya Chun supervised the setup of orbital beacons. If they try to land, we'll force them into kill zones. They won't expect resistance from a dying planet. Dr. Ward organized the survivors, teaching them simple defensive tactics. You don't need to win every fight, she told them. You only need to hold long enough for us to strike where it hurts. Slowly, the hopeless faces of the survivors began to change. Fear was still there, but something else sparked beneath it, something many had not felt in years. A chance. Above the planet, the Artemis floated in orbit, her crew tense as they tracked the approaching fleet. The Keth ships were massive, dark shapes like predators gliding through space. Their numbers dwarfed the lone human vessel. On the bridge, Halle studied the enemy formation. They think this is already over, he said. That's why we have one chance. His second-in-command frowned. Sir, against ships that size, our weapons won't even scratch them, and we don't aim for their armor, Halle replied. His eyes hardened. We aim for their pride. When the Keth finally arrived, the skies of the ruined planet lit up with fire. Their ships descended slowly, confident, their engines burning red. Survivors cowered in the tunnels as thunder rolled above them. But this time, humanity was waiting. The first Keth landing craft pierced the clouds and immediately hit a mine buried under the ash fields. The explosion tore it apart in a ball of flame. Cheers erupted in the tunnels. The survivors had never seen Keth, ships destroyed before they even touched the ground. The second wave tried a different path, but was met with hidden cannons powered by repaired human tech. Bright beams slashed across the sky, crippling their descent. The ruined city itself became a trap, swallowing their machines in rubble. For the first time, the Keth hesitated. Commander Hall led a strike team on the surface. His boots crunched over black dust as he signaled his squad forward. Remember, he said over comms, we can't outgun them, but we can outthink them. The team slipped between ruins, luring enemy patrols into choke points. Grenades buried under broken. Stone ignited with deadly force. Survivors, once too weak to fight, now guided humans through hidden tunnels, ambushing the Keth from the shadows. Every battle was small. Every victory was fragile. But with each fallen Keth, the survivors' eyes grew brighter. Deep underground, the alien leader watched the fighting through a shaky holofeed. He turned to Dr. Ward, disbelief on his face. They are stronger than us, faster, more ruthless. And yet, your people strike them down. Dr. Ward smiled faintly, though her face was tired. That's what happens when you underestimate humans. We don't stop, not when lives are on the line. The leader's expression softened, as if for the first time in years he dared to believe. But hope was fragile. As the day wore on, the Keth fleet began to adapt. Larger warships positioned themselves in orbit, firing beams that shook the ground. The Artemis darted between blasts, striking from the shadows, but the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. The bridge, alarms blared. Shields failing, cried a technician. Hale's voice cut through the chaos. Divert power to engines. We're not here to win a straight fight, just to buy time. The Artemis weaved through enemy fire, leading the Keth ships into asteroid debris. Mines planted earlier detonated, scattering fragments through their formation. The enemy roared in fury, their arrogance cracked by a single human ship daring to defy them. In the tunnels, the survivors huddled close as the ground shook. They could hear the battle raging above, every rumble a reminder that death was still near. Yet for the first time, they also heard explosions that belonged to their enemy. One child whispered, "They can bleed?" And hope spread like fire in dry grass. By nightfall, smoke filled the skies. Dozens of Keth ships had been destroyed or crippled, but the cost was high. Human soldiers lay wounded. The Artemis's hull was scarred, and everyone knew the Keth were only testing them. The real storm had not yet arrived. Commander Hall gathered his officers in the ruins of an old council hall. His face was tired, but his eyes burned bright. "They'll be back with everything they have," he said. "But now they know one thing. Humanity will not run. Not today. Not ever." And in that ruined hall, surrounded by both humans and survivors, a new plan began to form, one final gamble to break the Keth once and for all. The fight for a forgotten world. Dawn over the ruined planet was red with smoke. Towers that once touched the sky now lay broken, glowing like embers in the ash. The Artemis hovered above the wreckage, its hull scarred, its shields flickering. Below, in the tunnels, survivors waited in silence, listening to the rumble of enemy engines filling the sky. The Keth were coming in full force. Commander Hall stood on the surface with his soldiers, the ruins stretching around them like a graveyard. His voice was steady as he spoke into the coms. "Today, the Keth will try to finish what they started. But today, they face humanity. We don't fight for glory. We fight because someone had to answer the call. Hold the line, no matter what." The COMMs clicked with replies firm, ready. The crew of the Artemis knew this could be their last day. And still, not one turned back. The first wave struck. Dozens of Keth warships cut through the clouds, raining fire on the ruins. The ground split open. Buildings crumbled into dust. The sky became a storm of flame, but the humans were ready. Mines hidden beneath the rubble tore through the first landing craft. Cannons powered by salvaged energy cores lit up the sky, striking enemy armor. The ruins themselves became traps, collapsing onto advancing machines. Survivors joined the fight, hurling explosives down tunnels, ambushing patrols with sharpened steel. For the first time in years, they did not cower. They fought. The Keth roared in fury, their massive frames tearing through resistance with brutal strength. Yet everywhere they turned, humans struck back fast, clever, relentless. High above, the Artemis darted between enemy warships like a lone wolf surrounded by predators. Lieutenant Arya Chun commanded the gunners. "Lock onto their engines. We can't kill them all, but we can cripple their speed." Beams of fire lanced from the Artemis, striking weak points. One Keth destroyer spiraled into the planet's surface, smashing into the ruins below. Another lost control, colliding with its own fleet. The humans cheered, but victory was costly. A blast slammed into the Artemis, tearing through its shields. Sparks rained across the bridge. Alarms screamed. "Shields gone," a technician cried. Halley gritted his teeth. "Divert all power to weapons. If we fall, we'll take as many of them with us as we can." On the ground, Dr. Ward tended to the wounded. Smoke choked the air as medics rushed from one injured fighter to another. She worked with trembling hands, blood staining her sleeves, but her voice never broke. "You're alive," she told a soldier as she bandaged his arm. "Stay alive. That's how we win." A survivor beside her whispered, "Why do you fight for us?" "We are nothing to you." Dr. Ward met her glowing eyes. "Because you matter. Because no one else came. And because if we don't fight together, we all die alone." The survivor stared at her, then gripped a weapon with renewed strength. 4. The first time, she no longer looked broken. Hours passed. The battlefield became chaos. Explosions rocked the tunnels. Fires consumed what little remained of the cities. The Keth pushed harder. their numbers endless. Then came the flagship. A colossal shadow cut across the sky, so massive it blocked the sun. Its cannons glowed, building power for a strike that could level the entire mountain range. The survivors screamed, realizing this was how their world had been destroyed the first time. On the Artemis, Hale saw it too. His jaw tightened. He knew what had to be done. Target their flagship, he ordered. Sir, if we get close, we won't make it out alive, Chun warned. I know, Hale said softly. The Artemis roared toward the Keth flagship, weaving through fire, dodging blasts that could tear it apart. Every hit shook the ship. Every system screamed with overload. But still, they pushed forward. Inside the flagship. The Keth commander sneered. To him, humanity was nothing but insects daring to sting a giant. But as the Artemis closed in, the Keth realized too late humans were willing to burn with their enemy if it meant victory. Now, Hale shouted. The Artemis fired everything: torpedoes, beams, explosives, all focused on one weak spot the sensors had revealed. The flagship's armor cracked. Flames ripped through its hull. But the Artemis was caught in the blast. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring, systems shutting down. Eject emergency pods, Hale ordered. Get them out. The crew hesitated, refusing to abandon their captain. But Hale's voice was final. That's an order. On the ground, survivors and humans looked up as the sky lit with fire. The Keth flagship cracked apart, its burning remains raining down like a dying star. Cheers erupted, but they were mixed with tears. The Artemis had fallen silent. No one knew if anyone had survived. Yet the Keth fleet wavered. Their leader was gone, their flagship destroyed by a single human ship. The survivors saw it. They felt it. For the first time, the Keth looked afraid. And in that moment, the survivors rose together, charging out of the tunnels, fighting beside the humans in a way they had never dared before. The forgotten world had become a battlefield of hope, a message that changed everything. The sky burned with falling wreckage. The Keth flagship was gone, its broken frame crashing into the ruins it had once destroyed. Fire rolled across the horizon, painting the world red. In the tunnels, survivors held their breath. For years they had lived in fear, waiting for the end. But now, as the ground shook from the enemy's fall, something new rose inside them. Hope. On the battlefield, human soldiers and survivors fought side by side. The Keth forces, once unstoppable, began to falter. Without their leader, without their flagship, their strikes grew weaker. They had never faced enemies who refused to surrender, who turned ruins into weapons, who fought not for conquest, but for each other. A survivor, her arms trembling, raised a broken rifle and fired into the advancing Keth. She had never dared to fight before. Now she screamed with defiance. Others followed, pouring out of the tunnels, striking with knives, stones, and scavenged weapons. The humans guided them, shouting commands, leading ambushes, striking from shadows. Every blast of fire, every spark of courage pushed the Keth back step by step. But victory was not free. The Artemis had fallen silent. Smoke rose in the distance where the ship had crashed after destroying the flagship. Many feared the crew had been lost. Yet Commander Hale's sacrifice had broken the enemy's spine. Dr. Elena Ward worked furiously among the wounded, her face streaked with ash and tears. She refused to stop, even as her hands bled. When a survivor whispered, "We are alive because of you," she only shook her head. "No," she said firmly, "because of us. Together." High above, a Keth fleet began to retreat. One by one, their ships turned and pulled back into the stars. For the first time in history, the Keth were not the hunters. They were the hunted. The survivors stood in stunned silence as the last of the warships vanished beyond the clouds. Then the tunnels echoed with cries, not of fear, but of triumph. For the first time in generations, their world had survived. A battle. Days later, the battlefield grew quiet. Smoke cleared, fires dimmed. Survivors crawled out of the shadows and into the light. The ruins of their cities still stood broken, but now they were no longer tombs. They were symbols, proof that even in ashes, life could fight back. And came a moment no one expected. From the wreckage of the Artemis, survivors pulled out escape pods. The crew had lived, burned, bruised, battered, but alive. And among them, Commander James. Hale emerged, his uniform torn, his body weak, but his eyes burning with the same fire as before. The survivors bowed their heads. To them, he was no longer just a visitor. He was the captain who had risked everything for people who were not his own. That night, the survivors lit fires across the ruins, not to hide from shadows, but to show the galaxy they still lived. Humanity stood beside them, tired but unbroken. Together, they sent out a new message across the stars. Dr. Ward prepared the transmission, her voice steady as she spoke into the recorder. This message is for all who hear it. The Keth came to erase a world, and they failed. They failed because humanity answered a call that was never meant for us. And we will answer again, wherever voices cry out, because no one deserves to be forgotten. The signal pulsed outward, brighter than the first desperate plea. Echoing across the galaxy. In distant halls of power, the message was received. On worlds that had ignored the survivors before, leaders watched in silence. They had mocked humanity as weak, untested. Now they saw a species willing to fight enemies greater than themselves, for strangers they had never known. The galaxy whispered. Humans had heard what others ignored, and they had acted. Back on the ruined planet, survivors gathered around Commander Hall. A small child stepped forward, the same one who had once given him the broken toy ship. He placed it back into Hale's hands, but this time the child's eyes shone with pride. "You made them afraid," the translator said softly. Hale knelt, his voice low but fierce. "And we'll make them afraid again, if they ever return." The survivors cheered, their voices rising into the smoke-filled sky. For years, their cries for help had gone unanswered. For years, they had been forgotten by the galaxy, but humanity had changed that. The message that was never meant for them had become the start of something greater, a bond written in fire and blood, a story that would echo through history. Somewhere in the endless dark, the Keth licked their wounds, remembering the humans who had stood against them. The galaxy would never be the same again.